As it turns out, helping kids with misbehaviors can be really, really complicated. There's a lot to consider. Hi out there, this is Dr. Brett Pearce, child psychologist, and I'm starting a series with this video that I'm going to be calling The Basics of Behavior Management. And today, in this video, we are going to be talking about the first two things that we really need to consider when we're helping kids with behaviors. So these two things are first, needs, and second, how to set appropriate expectations. And so the reason I'm talking about two things in one video is that these things are important but fairly straightforward to talk about, so we should be able to fit two of them in. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about behavior management with kids. So as you might predict, behavior management is pretty gosh darn complicated. There's all kinds of stuff that go into it. I'm thinking this series is probably going to be 4 and 5 parts, and even then it'll just mostly be an overview. Behavior can involve lots of things. It can involve needs, expectations, motivations, skills, feelings. It can involve stress. It can involve group dynamics amongst more than one kid. There's all kinds of things that can go into behavior management for kids. So, in terms of talking about first needs, what we want to think about when we're trying to help kids with behaviors, for example, let's suppose that we have a kid who's maybe throwing a lot of tantrums. For fun, we'll say we got a 3-year-old little girl who's throwing a lot of tantrums. So the first and foremost thing that we want to think about with behavior management is, oddly enough, not really behavior management exactly, is we just really want to think, okay, well, what needs does kiddo have and how well are they being addressed right now? And this could be as simple as, what's the acronym HALT? H-A-L-T, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So it can be good to kind of slow down and go, wait, how's kiddo doing with hunger, anger, being lonely, or being tired? Could be any number of other needs going on, but we just want to think in terms of what's going on for kiddo. Is there some important need that's not being addressed that doesn't even necessarily directly have to do with the behavior, that's maybe just setting kiddo off easily and making it hard for kiddo to behave according to expectations? So always, always, always be thinking about, well, what's going on here? Some examples. Oh, I don't know. I mean, obviously things like being hungry or tired could be important to think about. And often in those situations, it works better to simply focus on addressing those needs rather than worrying too much about the misbehavior in many situations. Other times, you can have misbehaviors that are going on because of some sort of conflict that's occurring between two kids. And the conflict may not always be obvious, but we can see a lot of outbursts and things like that going on because a conflict isn't being addressed. Who knows? I mean, there could be a kiddo who's in a classroom and isn't understanding material well enough, and so is having behavior problems, or maybe understands material too well and needs to be challenged more. So the point is, the first step in behavior management is always, always, always just to think, well, is there some obvious need of some kind that needs to be addressed before we go into behavior management mode? As kids get older, we want to encourage them to speak up more for their needs, but it's always really a good idea and kind of our responsibility as adults to take the lead with considering what needs ought to be addressed and might be accounting for why a kiddo is stressed out or not handling things well. So always consider the needs first. The second part of this video has to do with how to set appropriate expectations. So how to set appropriate expectations is sort of deceptive in its simplicity. So if we have a kiddo who's struggling, like let's say we're talking about 4-year-old girl who's throwing a lot of tantrums. I'm sorry, it was a 3-year-old girl in the example. Let's suppose that she tends to throw tantrums the most at the store, and it happens basically every single time she goes to the store. So it's okay if our goal is to get her not to throw any tantrums at the store. So that's a goal. That's a lot different than our actual immediate expectation, though. So if we go to the store then with an expectation that she's not going to throw a tantrum at all, probably not going to work out too well, because she's done it 100% of the time for, I don't know, a long time. So going from 100% to 0% is probably, not going to happen. So basically what we need to do is take where kiddo's at in terms of their behavior, whatever the issue is, and say, okay, this is about where the kiddo's at. And so what I need to do is understand that's where they're at. And then I need to just nudge them up a little bit. And I need to figure out how to do that. I can motivate the kid. Maybe the kid needs to be taught skills. There's all manner of things that, we'll be talking about in later videos. But the first and foremost point is, with expectations, is that kiddo's level of success is a beautiful guideline for where our expectations need to be. And very often when we're frustrated with kids because they've had a lot of behavior problems, instead of meeting kid where they're at, we do the sort of opposite, and we basically say, well, I'm here, kid. This is my goal. This is what I need from you. It's nothing wrong with having needs and goals. But what we do is the opposite, is we expect kiddo to jump up to us. And unfortunately, with kids, that's just not how it works. They're a lot littler than we are. They don't have as much life experience. They don't have as much brain development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is us who need to drop down and try to meet kiddo where she's at. So in the example of the little girl tantruming at the store, a 3-year-old little girl, I think I keep switching the ages, but you get the idea. So 3-year-old little girl, we might go, okay, well, maybe it's just not a great expectation to expect her not to tantrum at the store. Maybe I just need to be okay with it, or maybe I need to make a point of saying, hey, we're going to go to the store and just hang out for 10 minutes and then leave to see if we can practice success. I'm not going to go there when we actually need to shop with you. You're not going to say that to her exactly, but you see where I'm going, is that we're thinking, how do I modify my expectations? And am I making a fair expectation in general? And how to know if it's fair. First and foremost, it's about whether or not the kiddo is able to do it. But it's also good to think in terms of the kid's age and developmental level. It's good to think of kiddo's personality. It's good to think of kiddo's psychiatric status. There's all kinds of things that can go into whether or not it's a fair expectation. Other things to think about, for example, with the store scenario, because that's a big one that comes up, is, well, how old is the kid and how long have we been out and about? Because being out and about and running errands requires a lot of really kind of adult-oriented, targeted, goal-directed behavior that's not easy for many kids to tolerate, particularly when they're young. So if you have a kiddo where they've handled being out and going from store to store to store to store for like 3 hours, and then finally just has had enough, that's just a good sign that maybe that's just a little too long for them. So it is really important for us to set appropriate expectations. And there's lots of factors that go into it, but the lovely kind of shortcut is just to go to the kid's level of success. And then we need to drop the expectation down somehow, whether that means we're providing a lot more support to get them up, or we're just dropping the expectation way down and then gently starting to nudge them forward. Doesn't make a huge difference. Why do we want to set appropriate expectations? Aren't we just sort of like enabling the kid by dropping expectations? No, we're not. In fact, it's a real basic part of managing behavior. Think of it like this. If I set the expectation for you all that I was going to do a 3-hour video once every day and that you were going to watch those videos without fail, within 24 hours of them being posted, that would not be too realistic. And I would not get a lot of success with viewers of this channel meeting that expectation. If you were my personal trainer and expected me to run miles and miles and miles without stopping, you would need to understand that I'm not exactly in that kind of shape yet, and I also have asthma. I mean, it just wouldn't work. And so all that's going to happen when we set expectations that are way too high is that everyone's going to get frustrated and everyone's going to sort of get convinced that we can't succeed. Kiddo's going to go, look, I can't please you, just whatever. I'm going to stop investing in pleasing you. And we are going to go, ugh, you just can't do this. This is frustrating. So that is why setting good expectations is a really, really important, technically second step. So again, basics of behavior management for kids. First, what needs are going on for kiddo, and do we just need to address some needs? And a lot of the time, it's all we need to do, and kiddo's gonna do better. Things like being hungry, angry, lonely, tired, etc. Second thing we talked about is setting appropriate expectations. We always, always, always need to be thinking, where's the kiddo at for real? Not where would I like them to be in terms of where we set the expectation. It's fine to set a goal, but a goal is different from an expectation. Like if our goal is for kiddo to eventually throw no tantrums, that's great. But in terms of what we're gonna expect kind of more immediately and in the short term, that's different. We need to meet the kid where she's at. So, thank you for listening. Expect more videos in this series to come about the basics of behavior management for kids. This is Dr. Brett Pearce, child psychologist. If you found this video helpful, please do subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Give me a thumbs up and smash that bell notification for when my next video goes live. This is Dr. Brett Pearce signing off.